So what's in the...
Sort of flatbread, yeah, so it's called tepla. It's from the Gujarats. It's got chapati flour, like normal Indian whole wheat flour, and then it's got a number of other flours. It's got bajra, which is millet flour. It's got jowar, which is sorghum flour.
Yeah.
It's got gram flour, which a lot of people know, which is made from pulse chickpeas. Like chickpeas. And methi, which is fenugreek, which is really good for you. So it's got lots of fenugreek leaves that have been chopped up.
That's over here.
There. That's over there.
Yeah.
And then lots of spices as well. So not too many, but just enough.
And then it's
some green chilli and some ginger.
Oh, lovely.
So I'm just going to add a little bit of oil.
This is the Travelling Through podcast. I'm your host Emma, and today's guest is Kuli Singh of Kuli's Kitchen, a Londoner whose family originates from the Punjab in India. He's cooking me a simple roti dish, after which we sit down to talk about his thoughts on London, the world and life.
What kind of olive oil are you using?
I'm just using ordinary olive oil in this case, but maybe I should use extra virgin, but yeah, it's all good.
Is it a kind of skillet pan?
Yeah, this is a tawa, which is a very Indian thing that we make all our rotis and stuff on.
And you eat this as a kind of pancake on its own, or do you
Yeah, you can have it on its own. You can probably have it with some yogurt and maybe some pickle.
Okay.
Yeah, so
is that homemade pickle?
Homemade pickle there.
Fantastic. This is going to be a treat for me. And the dish in total is called?
Tepla.
Tebla.
Tepla. T-H-E-P-L-A. T-H-E-P-L-A.
Yeah, so TH becomes a T. You don't say...
T.
Oh,
it's like Spanish T. Yeah, like
Tebla.
the Spanish also do it.
Okay. Right, I look forward to trying this.
Okay, I think we might be ready. Maybe it's a bit raw on this, so let's do it and then we're done.
Perfect. I taste a bit of the fenugreek on its own just to see.
Yeah,
I think I've only had fenugreek seeds. So
oh yeah, and it's the same. Yeah. It's quite bitter. I overspiced. I think I used more chilli than I should have done, so I hope it's okay.
It's not. The fenugreek isn't too... Well, I just had a bit of the leaf. Is the bitterness in the stem, do you think, more? Because it didn't... That didn't taste
It should be slightly bitter, but it's not that bitter, is it?
No.
Maybe they're taking the bitterness out of these things.
Thank you.
There you go.
Wow. Amazing. And these are the homemade pickles are... So that's... What's in your pickles?
There's carrot, red pepper, green chilli, and then it's got mustard seed and spices.
Okay, and then you eat that with the... This is very rude of me because I'm left-handed, and in India you can't use your left hand, can you?
Well,
So
I
I
was
have to
born
use-
here, so I'm using my left hand.
Oh, are you? So are you left-handed?
No,
No.
right-handed.
So when you go to India, do you have to to think? No, to
No,
use
we
your
don't
right-
have anything like that.
Okay.
People are very middle class and different now, so the world's changed.
Oh, that's totally delicious. Pickles good.
Spicy.
Yeah, spicy rather than hot. So when do you use red chili rather than a green chili?
They taste quite different. So green chili to me is more herby, and we use it in lots of things. Like there's green chili in here, but there's also red chili. Could have done with a bit more salt, I think.
That's lovely for me. Thank you.
But you can,
Unexpected.
but when you taste this, you do feel like it's doing you good.
Definitely.
And there's yogurt in there as well. Sorry, in the dough.
In the dough, okay.
Yeah.
And is it just an ordinary
I use
yogurt?
Greek yogurt.
Do you?
Yeah.
So do you do this as one of the recipes that you're cooking it?
Not yet, but I think I will because it's really good. But
That's lovely. And this is generally eaten as a starter or as a...
I don't know actually. I think it's a lunchtime thing. But Gujaratis, they're great at all these amazing snacks that they make, so a lot of them are vegetarian.
So it's very much a Punjab, a dish from the Punjab.
No, Gujarat. From the west.
Gujarat.
No, not my people.
Okay.
It's the people in the west of India. Well, you know how your body just wants something and my body really wants it, so there you go. I believe in that as well. I really believe in listening to your body.
I didn't know my body wanted this, but it did.
We'll make some more later.
Lovely.
Well, you know, I just love cooking for people, and obviously that's been missing in my life. Also reflecting on in the past, I haven't had people around enough because I'm always like Mr. Perfectionist, so... Oh, that pickle's spicy. That's woken me up.
That's lovely. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Absolute pleasure. Now, we'll switch radio off.
So, here I am today with Kulwinder Singh. Your name is Kulwinder, your first name Kulwinder, but your friends call you Kuli.
They do, yeah.
Yes.
It kind of started when I was, I think, at junior school.
Yes.
I don't know how that translates into the numbers in today's world, but yeah, I guess I was little and it just got abbreviated by some people to Kuli and it kind of stuck, and so here I am.
Yes, yeah. Do you ever use your full name? Passport, probably.
Yeah, passport and stuff, and actually at work I tend to have both. So
do you?
Yeah, normally it has Kulwinder and then Kuli in brackets, but people tend to call me Kuli.
Okay.
But I don't mind if people call me by my proper name.
Okay,
it's all good.
I think for me, I'll probably call you Kuli today.
Yeah, because that's how you know me.
That's how I was introduced to you. Because the first time I met you was actually at Travelling Through at the bookshop.
Indeed.
You'd been to an event with Steve Marriott and talking about the walking route, the pilgrimage to Santiago de Compostela. Yeah, it must be how many years ago? 2015 that was. So that's
wow,
6 years ago.
6 years, the Camino, yes.
Yes. Have you walked the Camino?
I would have loved to. So indeed, I met Steve a little bit before that, and I was at his launch party for his first book.
Oh, Candy Floss Guitar. Yes.
Candy Floss Guitar. Yeah, we connected through that, and I think we realised in some ways we were both on the same path, sort of moving away from our corporate life, and we both have a passion for travel and Spain in particular. So we've become friends ever since.
Yeah.
As I said, having found your amazing bookshop, and I just moved to the SE1 area as well, so I was living just down the road, really, like a 10-minute walk from Lower Marsh and Travelling Through. So it was so wonderful to be in your bookshop and then have a friendly, familiar face. And it's really important where in central London it can be, you can feel quite lost, and it can be a little bit of a
lonely place sometimes. Yes, I didn't realise that you had actually just moved to the area when I opened the shop, because it seemed to be the case for quite a few people who did come into the shop that they had also just moved to the area, and so we were all new people together, as it were.
When had you moved in then? When did Travelling Through open?
It opened in October 2014.
Wow, so that's weird. I you know how you just assume things, so I just assumed that you'd been there kind of forever.
Oh,
so
did you?
How
Okay.
weird. I didn't know you just moved
we were
in.
brand new.
So there you go,
so
that's that new energy, and that was I guess a year later for me, I moved in. And
Yes, yeah. In fact, that event was 6 months after
wow.
it opened, so
okay.
yeah, I was still finding my feet myself, actually,
Wow.
at that point.
But then we don't know, we just make assumptions about people,
we do.
Don't we? So
Yes.
you turn up at a bookshop and you think it's been there forever. I hadn't known that until now, actually. There we go.
But you visited the shop for quite a few of the different events that we had. But I remember that you actually you were on a bit of a food journey, or just starting on a bit of a food journey.
That's fair to say, yeah.
Yeah, and your friend, I think it was Claudia, who came, and you were considering running an event at the shop, but I wasn't really set up properly with a kitchen to do that. And
but
I think
we had a good chat, didn't we? Yeah.
We did, and I know you were quite reticent about the food journey. It was still quite new for you, and you weren't sure whether it was the path that you wanted. But now you've changed your Instagram name, I see, to KULI'S Kitchen. So clearly there has been quite a bit of progress since we closed the shop, which was in 2019 now. So what's been happening on your...
Yeah, I guess progress can be gradual, and we wake up one morning and we look and we look at what's changed. So it doesn't happen overnight. But yeah, I'm certainly in the process of changing, and we have done again, funny enough, Claudia and I and others have joined forces, and we've done a number of events. So I've done a few pre-COVID. We did a few wellness events in real life, in person with others. Day events, which were wonderful.
We've even almost forgotten what that is.
Well, it does seem strange, doesn't it? It's so funny how when the status quo changes, we kind of forget how things were, and we just think where we are has been here forever, which isn't the case, and we'll be out of this soon. But yeah, it seems like a lifetime ago. Yes.
So your food journey, really, did it begin from home as a youngster, and with the food that you were being given at home by your mum? Because your parents are from the Punjab, you were telling me.
Yeah, originally, yeah.
Yes.
That's sort of the part of the world that my parents are originally from, or their families are from originally. My dad's family are in Delhi. Mm-hmm. But yeah, they hail from slightly further north in the Punjab, in the Indian part, yeah.
And the food that your mum cooked for you as a child, was it a mix of all sorts of things, or was it very much from the Punjab? Or
I mean, my mum's a great cook, and just a consummate, very instinctive cook, and she's been cooking all her life. So, whatever she turns her hand to, it's normally amazing, and it doesn't require a recipe, and it doesn't require measuring spoons, but it's done with instinct and love. But yeah, it has tended to focus on the recipes and the stuff that's been bestowed upon her from her mother and family.
Okay.
And so that's what I grew up with. There was always time, of course, for the odd bit of, in inverted commas, English food, or fish and chips, and dare I say it, Finder's crispy pancakes. But yeah, on the whole, it was good, wholesome, real, proper cooking. Mm-hmm. And that's something that, when you grow up, you just take how you're brought up for granted. And when you get older, you realise that not necessarily everyone has the same upbringing, so it's interesting. And again, thinking that I think the immigrant experience for a lot of people, there's challenges. Obviously, challenges are quite often with, understanding the host culture and all of that kind of stuff. And there's issues, with making our way in the world and finances and that kind of thing. But I think a lot of immigrant communities, one thing that they do have, which is quite a strength, can be the food culture and the strength of that in terms of having real home-cooked food and having that appreciation of real food and the importance of it, and food and community, which invariably go together, of course, food, community, family. So they are definitely points of strength, and we're realising increasingly in this world today how divorced we are from those values, and a lot of us are looking to actually get back and embrace those values.
Yes. Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, meeting around the table with people just to talk and eat good food, it's such a simple concept. Yes, it's so necessary for survival. We have to eat, but also just for our mental survival too, to be able to interact with people and get ideas and just talk really in a relaxed environment. And in today's society, where we've tended to go down for quite a while down this fast food track, and it's fast food and everything on the run, you never sit down and actually sit around the table and enjoy food. But culturally, that's very important. I mean, we grew up always sat around the table, and now, even now, I like to sit at a table to eat. I mean, sometimes it's nice to have TV dinners, but the ones I really enjoy are sitting around the table, because you can talk and the food's there and you've got colour and you've got taste and you've just got... It's not gourmet food always.
Not always,
it's just,
and nor does it have to be.
No, exactly.
We have to get through days and weeks, and it doesn't always have to be gourmet. So, but it can still be delicious, and it can still be everyday and delicious, and it can be sustaining and nourishing.
Definitely.
And delicious every day too. It's about getting into those habits, and I think the food industry has got a lot to answer for in terms of making us think that we have got our priorities wrong, and actually we're too important and too clever, and all of these things, and too busy rushing around doing important things apart from the most basics of sustaining us. It should definitely be the other way around. But of course, the food companies, the food industry needs our money and wants our money. And since the war, where they had all of this ability to process food from the Second World War and that war effort, they needed new customers, and they piggybacked on the fact that suddenly both breadwinners were working.
Yes, yeah.
And so they took that vacuum and exploited it. And we're here today because of that constant marketing that we've had thrown at us from, dare I say it, the 40s onwards.
Yeah, yeah.
And here we are now, where so much processed food is being consumed in certainly in many countries. I think, often we idolise the Mediterranean diet, for example, and the original Mediterranean diet is amazing, but in all of these countries, the trends are the same, and in Asia as well. So we look at Japan and Korea, and dare I say it, middle class India. People are eating more processed food. They're idolising fast food, and they think this is the way.
Yes.
And for example, in India, they're spending a huge amount of money on this fast food, which they think is status.
Then
there's all of this metabolic syndrome, diabetes, all of these illnesses that are happening.
Yes.
Again, I mean, it's a twofold thing, right? Also amongst the chattering classes, there are a lot of people who worry about their health a lot more than they used to do as well. So, but unfortunately, there's always a lot of people there's a lot of people out there who are suffering. In the UK, of course, it tends to be based on poverty and lack of education and knowledge.
I think it's interesting that also since the pandemic and since the number of lockdowns, we're up to lockdown 3 now. I
believe so. I'm losing count.
No, I know, it just seems like one continuous lockdown. But anyway, but how people are going, some people anyway, are going back to the basics of making their own bread and cooking again, because suddenly they're at home, they have more time, because it was very much a time-poor environment, because people were spending so much energy getting to the place of work, coming back. By the time they were back, people are tired, and so they go for the quick, fast option. Whereas now people are working from home, and therefore they have more time to spend on this thing. So it's going to be interesting to see whether the health of the nation will actually improve as a result of it. However, it was interesting that when the government gave the vouchers, go and dine, and it was for McDonald's as well, and the queues. Everyone was talking about going to McDonald's, so you just think, why?
People do what they're used to.
Yes,
but I mean that
just
again
shows how entrenched it is within our psyche and our mindset, that it, as you said, it's considered a treat to eat something that actually is bad for your body, essentially.
Exactly.
Eating all the time, but once in a while, fine. But unfortunately, how many people do that once in a while, and it becomes more than once in a while? But anyway, we are digressing totally.
But again, just to finish that off, though, I think it becomes quite divided. So I think with the lockdown, you find that a lot of people are eating better, as you said, and finding the time and cooking more and making their own bread and stuff. But then again, a lot of people are suffering because they've got all this time at home and they're eating a lot more sugar, and
that's
there's a lot of people saying they're putting on weight and all those things. So there's always two sides to a story.
Of course.
And very much so. I think a lot of people are suffering as well.
Yeah.
So some people are thriving in amongst it, as you said, and cooking better and eating better. But then a lot of people are suddenly, we're not as busy, and then all of these other addictions start to take hold.
Yes. After school, you went to university at Cambridge, and there a different world, and you didn't go to study food science.
Absolutely not. No. I mean, I guess I didn't really think about food that much when I was young, because, like I said, because of our family environment and my parents' values of food that's home cooked, and we didn't go out eating out all the time and stuff. That wasn't a thing. And actually reflecting, I think for most of the country, there's been a lot of changes. In the 80s, people didn't tend to go out and eat a lot. And it's been democratized a lot, irrespective of culture. It's been democratized a lot over the last 20, 30 years. I just took it for granted, really, I guess. I was always very vocal, I think, as a child, and I knew what I liked. And could be quite fussy, as a lot of us younger people often are. Mm-hmm. And then, I had the fortune at university where I was at King's College, and King's, interestingly enough, we have this amazing neo-Gothic dining hall. It's a bit like Hogwarts. So,
is it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, in those 3 years, I lived a bit of a charmed life of having an amazing time with my wonderful new friends, who some of them are, I think, will be friends for life, and still got some really, really good friends out there.
Yes.
Hello, everyone. Who I love to bits, and I've known since those days. So food was laid on for us.
Yeah.
Yes. I was lucky enough to have all 3 years in college, so I didn't have to worry about finding accommodation elsewhere. It was all 3 years in college. In fact, my final year, long story, but anyway, I ended up getting a set. So a set's like where you're lucky enough to have a room and a adjoining living room, which was once occupied by E.M. Forster.
Oh, was it?
Back in the day.
Oh, so, my goodness, claim to fame.
Yeah, so that's the claim to fame.
Could you cook in there then? Did you?
So you couldn't. So yeah, the second year hostel that I was in, which was the Spalding Hostel, that actually had kind of shared kitchen facilities. And yes, even within the older bits of the college, you'd have kitchens, but I'd hardly ever use them. I think I did a dinner party once. I think once I cooked for other people, and I think friends remarking that it was okay.
Yes.
But it's a hazy, distant memory.
Okay.
Otherwise, King's Food, certainly back in the day, I don't know about now, but wasn't famous for being particularly notably good or not.
Mm-hmm.
So, it wasn't really a big part of my life until later on, when I left, and then I had to fend for myself. So I ended up living on my own with other university friends, and I guess we had to fend for ourselves and cook for ourselves.
And but growing up at Edding Point, had your mother taught you how to cook some of the dishes ever, or was it did you phone her up afterwards and say, "How do you cook this dish?"
I don't think so. I just think I had so little interest, and I was so busy in my life, you know, and studies and what have you, that it really wasn't really a thing until later on. And then, as you can see, we're surrounded by cookbooks.
We are, yes. Oh my goodness, I hadn't noticed quite how many you had here.
Yeah, I'm still.
You've got a pyramid of cookbooks.
Yeah, I've got to build a bookcase for some of these to go in since I've moved.
So
but
banish your belly and the plant power way, Indian essence. There we go.
There we go. It's all sorts. But I guess Nigel Slater at university, one of my friends had one of his books, Real Fast Food. That's a bit of a classic now, and it's a small paperback book, and it was amazing. And I love his way of looking at food, which is not being really prescriptive. And he'd have recipes, and it's an amazing little paperback which has so many useful recipes. And to this day, his books are really good, and he follows that philosophy of taking a recipe and saying, look, you can do it like this if you got this thing. If you haven't got this thing, it doesn't matter. Or maybe you should do this, or maybe you should use this.
Yes.
And I think it's a really good way of thinking about food. And if we try and make everything perfect and follow someone's recipe to a T, it's not always a good thing. So it's much better if we try and trust our instincts a bit and don't worry too much if we don't have the exact ingredients. And that's definitely my mum's philosophy as well, And she'd often look at me quite bemused when I'm there with my books and measuring spoons and things. And that's not what Indian mothers do. They cook with instinct, and much better for it, I think. Yeah, yes. But your journey from university then took you into the working world, as it were, and you worked with, was it for IBM partly? Yeah, so I started off working for IBM. That was my first job. So I kind of worked for them as a pre-university employee because I had to take a year off. And then I've been in technology ever since. And you went from working for quite a large company then, well, not quite, a very large company in the corporate world, as it were, into working as a consultant. So you've experienced both sides of the working environment, and I wonder whether working in those two worlds and the experience you've got from that is now driving partly how your new kind of path with food may go, or is it too early to say? Too early to say. Yeah, I guess I've just been working in the corporate world for a long time, and it was time for me to think about other things and my passion, and this food journey just carries on. It's just never ending for me. It's what was the trigger? It's an obsession and a passion. What was the trigger for? I think I don't know. It's hard to really think about. It's just a progression over the last 25 years. Ever since I've lived on my own, I've just got more and more interested in, initially, obviously just cooking for ourselves, but then it got combined with the health thing. So I think there's a lot of us, some of us, in our 20s and 30s, we were so busy running around, and our values were different, and spent a lot of time just having a good time and not really thinking about our bodies that much, and our health. And as you get older, then you realise that we need to think about that to a certain extent, and then just combining it with my absolute passion about cooking and food. And maybe it's because my job would often be quite analytical and logical, and there wasn't enough creativity in my life, and maybe it was that yearning for creation. I think we should all create. Not having that outlet, and maybe that I found my outlet to create through food. I guess playing the guitar to some extent is another way I get some creativity. So it's good that we should all have an outlet to create.
Yes.
And, rather than just maybe maybe I had enough of just doing what I'd done in terms of the corporate thing, which was, to me, I kind of sold out a little bit. I didn't follow the neuroscience path. I didn't necessarily follow a passion. I wanted to do well. And I wanted to set myself up and have some financial security, I guess. So that's in many ways why I followed that path.
And you also have travelled quite a lot, and I wonder whether the travel and tasting food abroad as well helped to kind of spark that love for food and different styles of food and flavours and make you think more about food in a way beyond just cooking for yourself.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I guess having been born in the UK with an Indian family means that automatically you have quite a split personality in terms of the way you look at the world. So you're already, even from a very young age, it's in many ways a gift, but also a curse. So you have that ability to code switch between the two worlds, and you have a knowledge of these two worlds in terms of culture and indeed in terms of food. And then as you get older and you're in London, which is already this melting pot of people who are, I guess like myself, many of us have our feet in two cultures thousands of miles away. It gives you quite a lot of strength in terms of ability to kind of switch and combine things and understand those combinations. And so therefore, then being able to go out there into the world and then travel a lot. I traveled a lot just because I took it upon myself to travel a lot on holiday and trips. But then also at one point in my life, in my 20s, I was in a startup company, and I got the gift of traveling a lot on business, and
brilliant.
All around Europe and certain parts of the world, the US and other parts of the world as well. And then I've done most continents apart from Antarctica, obviously little slivers, but it's such a gift to be able to go out there and see people's views and of course for me, the fascination of food. I love, for example, like I keep on going back to Thailand. I just love the culture there, the laid back lifestyle, and the food is amazing. So I love Indian food, but then Thailand takes things in another direction. And then closer to home, I just love Spain in terms of European food. I just think it's amazing. I just love that unapologetic way that the Spanish have such unapologetic attitude to food, and they have punchy flavours, which I think, I don't know, with an Indian kind of palate, you can understand, lots of garlic. They might not use spices, of course, but the garlic and the saffron and sometimes I like to think, cooking with the soul of a Spanish peasant is definitely a good thing.
So with the travels that you've done, obviously food has played a big part in that exploration. But is it because of food has influenced which parts of the world you've gone to, and when you've got to a country or a continent, where you've headed for? Or is it just a case of you stumbled across it, or do you always look for certain kind of places like the street foods or the street markets, or do you not think about it? Is it just?
I think there's a lot of stumbling. I think there's a certain joy of I think sometimes not knowing that much when you go somewhere.
Yes.
So not reading the spoilers.
Yeah. Yes.
And just enjoying it.
And discovering. Yeah.
And discovering, and I agree with you. Like, the joy of street food is incredible. So rather than going to a fancy place, when I was younger, I was always about the fancy places, and now I'm like, actually, no, I want somewhere with soul. I'd much rather go to a place, just forget about street food, but I'd rather go to a place where there's that feeling of love and that community. And I remember going with my parents to Cyprus, and for them, sometimes you go to places and they treat you like literally like family, and it's almost like their living room, and they've got their kid running around. And there's so many places around the world where you do get these little places which are family-run affairs, and there's that soul of the home there, and they're not necessarily expensive, but that's I think that's the joy, where you have that gift of that real love that comes into home cooking. Of course, the Michelin star and gourmet stuff has its own place in life, but but
it's more theatre, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It's all part of the art form of perfection. But I think all of us, if we were to answer that time-honoured question about our last meal at the Gallows, often people will go to comfort food and homely food, not some really strange, obscure, some very kind of artful gourmet or cordon bleu dish. It would normally be something with heart and soul. And then street food, that takes that to another level. And so many cultures, street food is huge. And of course, in this country, it's become massive over the last 20 years.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Before that, I always used to think, why don't we have street food in this country? What's wrong? But, but suddenly, because of the blending and the melting pot, I think, and people, I guess, saw that there was a opportunity, and suddenly, again, this is a whole nother, this could be a whole separate podcast, but, I can't necessarily say that it's accessible to all, because street food in this country is quite expensive.
It is. Some of it's very expensive, depending where you go.
Yeah, you can easily spend a tenner on something.
Yeah.
But I still think it makes it more accessible, because even in the most humble and basic of restaurant, by the time you've had the meal, and then maybe you probably eat more there anyway, and then you've paid the service charge and all of that stuff, it ends up being a fair amount. So if you just have that very simple transaction of a stall, you get one dish, and there's that wonder of a given stall merchant having done that thing and done it, perfection. This dish I'm giving you, I've perfected it. I'm making it day in, day out. Maybe less so here, but certainly when you go to Asia and other places, this will be the best X and Y and Z. This might be the best Delhi aloo chaat, for example. That is it. This is it. This is where they do one of the best ones. They do it day in, day out. For them, I know it's survival, but for us, it's like literally a work of art. It's taking that thing and the depth of their hands, the instinct of making it. That's such a beautiful thing that.
And you're seeing it. It's actually, you're seeing it from, literally, it is from the kitchen, or from the grill in front of you, or the wok, or whatever it is, being cooked in front of you, and then you're eating it fresh. I think it's that pleasure of seeing it being cooked in front of you, and then you're eating it immediately. Quite often at a table with benches with people you've never met before, and sometimes you have a conversation, sometimes you don't, but it's that delight again of people sitting around eating freshly cooked food.
And COVID friendly. So again, like today, actually, I cycled up to Putney, and by the river there was actually quite a few stalls that were set up with queues. So so there we go.
Yes. So with with KULI'S Kitchen, you've done some supper clubs at home, but not here in Richmond where you are now.
No, where you were not here, but before, when I was in Southwark,
And because I remember coming to one of them, and I think I was a guinea pig, so it was really before you'd actually officially started. The kind of cooking that you are producing for the supper clubs, what's your focus for it? Do you have a concept that you will only cook certain foods, or is your idea to change a menu or mix menus between kind of like a first course, main course, dessert, or is it a seasonal thing, or how are you going about it?
Things change with the time and what I see out there. So I think at the moment, food in London certainly it can be quite fashion led.
Yes.
I guess I have a central core, which is, well, there's two parts of me, so I'm dragged in two directions. So one part of me is dragged just in that, can I make the most delicious, the most authentic, the most gourmet, and I get pulled in that direction, and it makes me want to, go and make coq au vin, or how could I make the ratatouille that would be worthy of someone over in Provence? So there's that direction. And then the other direction is, and increasingly, having recently done a wellness event over Zoom where we created this amazing community. So I did that with Claudia and Alpa, and we created this amazing community to help people it's called Look Good, Feel Good, to basically for people to, particularly in this time, to have that community, to be healthy and to help people have better habits. Claudia did an amazing job making sure that everyone had that accountability in that one-to-one. And then I did a number of cooking lessons. So that's very much about having that intersection of deliciousness and food that's amazing and delicious and tasty, but then having that focus on the health as well. And understanding that those things aren't mutually exclusive. So that's another side of it. Yeah, that intersection of both things can happily happen, but then I'm happy to go down the road of, okay, I'm trying to be healthier. What kind of dishes? And that fascinates me. What kind of dishes can I have? Rather than doing, I don't know, there's a lot of guys, for example, who will just eat like bland chicken breast and broccoli, which I think is a complete anathema to me. So there's that kind of, very much counting calories or counting macros. It's become very fashionable. I'm counting my macros, it's like how many grams of fat, how many grams of carbohydrate. Oh God, carbohydrates are bad, all of this stuff. And, we've ended up being this kind of, you've got a bottom up and top down world. So this very sort of bottom up approach of thinking of food in terms of that components. And that's not how it works. And we're learning that calorie counting and these things, it's not how we should be looking at food. It's so much more intricate and complex. And now that we're learning about the microbiome, if your engine isn't running properly, and then you put bad stuff into it, then you get a negative feedback loop. So it's so important that if we go back to some of the principles and the values of cultures that had a food culture going back, then I think, we can get, well, one, it tends to be delicious. And then I always laugh that, if you were to eat like a peasant, you'll probably be really healthy because you get that diversity and, it's usually simple food.
And you're eating the seasons
and
as
you're
well.
automatically eating the seasons because it's what's on the land, what's around you, and then you learn to respect every bit of it. We're getting so divorced from that where, we go to the supermarket and everything's wrapped in plastic. And so, children are growing up where they've got no understanding of the most basic sort of fruit and vegetables and then, meat. It's like, what is this with loads of chicken breasts? Everyone's just eating chicken breast. One, it's the most bland, boring, especially if it's, and on the whole in supermarkets, it tends to be factory farmed. Like this horrible, like Frankenstein kind of food. It's battery chicken and stuff. It's horrendous. So because of that, it's got no texture. It's really bad for you because it's pumped full of antibiotics and God knows what.
With your food journey and what you're going to put on the plate with your menus.
I kind of, like a lot of people are doing now, is kind of mix it up. If I do Mediterranean, then I quite like mixing from that Mediterranean basin. There's so many things. So I did a recent charity cooking lesson where two of the main things that we cooked, one was Piedmontese peppers from Italy, and then kissa, which is an amazing bulgur wheat salad. Which is sort of more like Turkey, Syria, that part of the world where wheat actually came from originally. And so things that are close by can work together well. I wouldn't necessarily mix from opposite parts of the world necessarily. But so the regionality is important. But then, yes, I have that pull of gourmet versus just looking at the health. But, those things can intersect quite well as well. So
the cooking we get on television is a very sort of chef-based cooking rather than what we can actually achieve on an evening where we just want something quick and easy to cook that's healthy. We've forgotten, me included, what goes together that can very easily create something that's quick and easy to make, it's healthy, and it's tasty. Perhaps put tasty at the top of that. And sometimes it's just by a question of adding, I don't know, some chopped parsley or a herb or something. But we've forgotten how to do that basic cooking, shall we say, that came naturally to people who worked the land. It was just because that's all they had.
No, completely agree. I think but a lot's to do with the last few generations that have come up, and because we've had so much processed food thrown at us, we're not growing up with that instinct. And it's instinct, isn't it? That's been handed down, and we only build that instinct we have to exercise that muscle in terms of having that ability of just taking things and, again, it's not about the recipe books in those cases, is it? It's really about being taken by the hand, being led by the hand and being taught at the start then gives you an armory, right? So then you're like, okay, well, you know, I've got an aubergine and then I know that I can put them in a pot and then I can stew them down and they'll taste good, and I can, you know, add some tomatoes and garlic because they go together. And as you said, some flat leaf parsley would be great there, or it's having that understanding of how flavors go well together, and you build that up with time.
Pardon the pun.
Indeed. Great herb, by the way.
Yeah, it is. But you've got an event that's coming up next Saturday, which is called...
Which I now know is next Saturday.
It's called, in fact, I had to write it down because I knew I wouldn't remember. Delicious Nights In, is that right? Yes,
that's right.
And the concept behind that is...
So we've done a few of these. We're collaborating with the Lodge, which is a yoga studio out in Bermondsey, and they do, it's more than yoga, they do all kinds of activities, and it's an amazing, wonderful place. So big shout to the Lodge.
Okay.
Out Bermondsey way.
Okay, we'll make sure we will put the links to them in the show notes. Yes.
So we're collaborating with them.
Yes.
And so we've done a fair few of these, part of the Look Good Feel Good program, and I did a charity event recently, and Claudia and I felt that it'd be really good to carry this on at the moment. Zoom cooking's a fun thing, and people are, you know, the pandemic's has changed behaviour to some extent, and this is a great way of forging a bit of community, getting people to be led by the hand and learn some new cooking techniques, and just create some recipes together. And then we sit down and we eat together as well, which is really nice. So it's about that community, which is so important to Uchi Wellness and to Kuli's Kitchen. So key.
Yes.
And also, having done a few of these now, you know, whereas I would have been maybe a bit against doing it in the past, obviously you'd prefer to meet in person in some cases, but you know, I think it will lead us to more of a hybrid world where you know, we obviously want to do a lot of things face to face, but sometimes you can't, and then obviously you can have people from all over
that's what I was going to say.
Geographically,
it gives a real opportunity to include people from other parts of the world who may not be able to come to you directly, but can still be part of an event, or you have separate events. But also, I thought just when you were talking there, it's lovely meeting up in person and you cook together. But it's also, I imagine, that because you're actually cooking in your own kitchen, you're actually more comfortable because you know where all your utensils are and everything. So it's actually, sometimes when you do cook something, like when I went to Thailand and I learnt to cook all these amazing dishes, and I thought, wow, this is fantastic. But I came back here and I tried to replicate it, and it was a labour of love, and it took me like 5 hours to do. Whereas if you're doing it for the first time in your own kitchen, it's almost like you've done it once in your own space. So
in your kind of home environment.
Yes, I wonder whether there's actually some mileage in this and carrying on with doing some Zoom meetups, which allows people to cook from their own home.
There's definitely pluses and minuses. That's a very good point. You know, people are in their comfort zone, but then again, you know, some people would argue that they'd rather be face to face and have that connection.
Of course.
And you know, obviously, as a teacher, it was fairly terrifying when I started. It's like, oh my God, you know, I've got 10 people here. How am I going to communicate that information to them, and what if they issues? I mean, I think I've been quite fortunate. You know, my students have been so good and so wonderful. Clearly, you know, obviously you have to help them out occasionally, and working together as well. You know, with Claudia, it's good. You need to have 2 people. So Claudia's behind the camera, and then
when people have sort of signed into Zoom and they're cooking at home, what's been the difficulties of doing it that way? People found that, how do I know when, I don't know, I've whisked this.
Well, they just ask. So, you know,
and it hasn't been difficult to explain and get the result.
No, like I said, partly I think because of the diligence and the calibre of the students I've had.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, obviously they were learning and they got value out of it. But I guess if it was, I don't know, you know, maybe if it was people who were really struggling, and if there were 10 people who were really, really quite remedial, then maybe it would have been hard work over Zoom. But people had a reasonable ability in the kitchen, and you know, I was always there, and I'm always quite understanding and patient, and the lessons are meticulously planned to make sure that I've timed things and there's enough time to go through things, and you know, I'm always there listening, and Claudia's there to get that feedback from people as I'm obviously rushing around the kitchen too. But then, you know, she's making sure that the phone or the camera is actually focused in on what's going on at the right time, and then getting the feedback from people. So if there's any questions, then I can answer it. And then obviously being patient with everyone and making sure that we give people time to get through each step before we get to the next one. And I've always planned the lessons so that, you know, if we're making a couple of things or 2 or 3 things, that everything's timed so that we work on one thing and then in parallel we'll start the other one, and then the starter might be in the oven and then we're working on the second thing, and maybe rustling up the dessert while we've got a bit of a break with the main. So it's actually quite a lot of fun. It's been a massive learning experience for me as well in terms of refining this, but I think we've got a good formula here. One that, well, we've had some great feedback, and I just want to build upon this and make it better. And I really look forward to having, you know, a number of supper clubs here as well, and then cooking lessons. But of course, real life cooking lessons has its own challenges, right? So, you know, something you need to have a lot of infrastructure yourselves. If you're going to have 10 people cooking at your place, then suddenly, you know, you're talking about creating a cooking school. Then you need to have those things in. Now, I know you can buy actually quite cheaply induction cookers and things. So these things are more accessible these days. So you'd end up having maybe, you know, folding desks and stuff. And I think there's ways around it, or otherwise you have people who turn up and maybe have more boutique one-to-one lessons. So everything has its challenges, right? You know,
Definitely.
But I take your point about the Zoom class and the fact that, you know, everyone's at home, so that has an amazing benefit in that respect, in terms of then you don't need to have a huge space with many hobs and stuff like that. But then on the other hand, it's not really face to face.
No. So for Saturday coming up, what's on the menu? Are you allowed to reveal, or is it all?
Oh, indeed. So we gave people a couple of options. What we've ended up is the title is Spice It Up. So the starter is, it's quite a kind of millennial sort of thing of, obviously we know veganism's become a big thing. And, and I tried to make my lessons accessible to a broad range of people. So the starter is going to be buffalo cauliflower wings, taking the famous American buffalo wing.
Yes.
Now, interestingly enough,
How do you
buffalo wings are not the wings of buffaloes. It comes from Buffalo in New York State. So, and when I went to the States the first time, I was obsessed by these things.
Were you?
I think I had the best buffalo wings ever with the blue cheese dip the first time. And, you know, it's like a drug addict. You're always chasing that first hit. So I tried to chase that first hit and couldn't really replicate it. But
you've got a bug in your hand.
Have I got a bug in my hand?
No, you haven't.
Okay,
no,
cool. Because there wasn't like a bug running
around. There was a
running
bug
around,
around, but
yeah,
no, I
good.
think you're
Okay.
right. If I see it, I'll let you know.
Thank you. I think it might be
It's
psychosomatic.
not, it's not in your head. Don't worry.
Thank you.
So buffalo wings. So buffalo cauliflower wings.
Yeah.
So what does that look like?
So
in
I'm
reality?
working on the recipe right now, but my vision for it, and I know Leon has just started doing one in the supermarket.
Oh, really?
As well.
Okay.
But the vision is obviously to make the food accessible and easy enough. But the vision is crispy outside, but not fried, because we're not going to do deep frying because one, it's hard work and it's dangerous and all of those things. So and also it doesn't tend to be the healthiest. So we're going to either bake or maybe shallow fry the cauliflower in a crispy coating.
Okay.
And then it will be drenched in Frank's hot sauce. So that's the secret to buffalo wings.
See, I just found out about Frank's hot sauce today.
There we
you
go.
showed me the bottle. And then
all the secrets are coming out here. So that's the idea, is like I'd like the cauliflower not to go to mush, to have a bit of bite to it, have a crispy exterior. You tend to combine it with a bit of butter or oil. So once you have that crispy cauliflower wing, you drench it in that and put it back in the oven or on the pan for a few more minutes, and absolutely delicious with a vegan blue cheese dip. And then for the main, we're going to go full on Indian. So I've had a lot of good comments for the Goan fish curry that I've made a few times, and so we're going to basically make that with the proviso that not everyone's eating fish. So if they want to put veg in there, or they want to use tofu, or they want to use chicken, they can do.
Okay.
But the main thing is we make like a spice paste, so we'll make that, and
nice.
and then we'll get everything going while the cauliflower's doing its thing, and that's the vision.
And the
some ways.
dessert.
And then so in the past we've done desserts, and not everyone's been on board because people are trying to be healthy and stuff.
Yes.
So in this case, we're focusing on putting the work in for the starter and the main, and people can bring in whatever desserts, or dare I say it, make a dessert beforehand, and let everyone know the deliciousness that they've created.
Okay.
While we're eating, and then if people want to have a glass or two of wine, then they can. While we sit down and eat together.
Sounds delicious. So can anybody sign up to this course? Is there?
Anybody can sign up. It's completely open.
You do limit how many that you...
To a certain extent, yeah. But
so like
at
10
the moment,
or 20 is...
Yeah, sort of about 20 odd, I think we'd say. Because we obviously want to be able to give that feedback. And
Yes, in a manageable...
Yeah, in a manageable way.
Yeah.
Wow,
sounds great. So we'll put in the show notes. Are there still a few places
There are. There's a few places available.
Fantastic.
Absolutely.
So if anybody's listening from around the world, they can sign up.
Absolutely, yeah. Love to see you there.
Okay.
Let's go global, guys.
Yeah, I think it's about time. Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely.
KULI'S Kitchen goes global.
Yeah.
How far away have people signed up from? Is it generally been
in the UK, but we've had one of our lovely folk, Namita, who she started doing the course, our Look Good, Feel Good course in the UK, but then she headed over to California, which is where she's from.
Okay.
So she has cooked with us once.
Oh, brilliant.
While she's been in California.
Because that's the thing, it's the time difference as well, which can be...
But I think that
works.
Lunch? I think it works because it's such a time difference that it was her lunch while it was our dinner, which is cool. 7 hours, right? So So there we go. So they were 7 hours behind us.
Okay.
So that was cool.
Yeah, guys, sign up to KULI'S
there you
Kitchen.
go.
To Delicious Nights In.
Delicious Nights In. So, maybe this time we'll have someone doing that for breakfast. You never know.
They could always heat it up later, I suppose. Have it
for like get some people in from Melbourne.
They could have it for brunch.
They could have it for brunch. Yeah,
there we go.
It'd be amusing if we had someone from Melbourne doing that for breakfast.
Yeah, no, definitely. Right, okay, you Aussies, listen in.
Yeah, exactly.
We're talking about multiculturalism in London, particularly, a very multicultural city. And for you growing up as a Londoner in this city, you're a part of the melting pot as basically your first generation Londoner. How do you classify yourself? Do you just say, I'm a Londoner? Or do you, in some situations, say, I'm a Punjabi Londoner? Or
I don't know. I just normally say I'm Kuli, really.
You're Kuli. Perfect.
And I guess that kind of sums it up. I don't like all of this putting people into boxes.
No, I agree.
There's far too much of that.
Yeah.
And I think being part of that melting pot, when we're younger, obviously it has its, as discussed before, it has its challenges, it has its benefits. But and we think about these boxes quite a lot, and I think as we get older, too often, as we get older, there's boxes within boxes within boxes, and identity is complex. And I think it's really, really good, and I'm so proud that the younger generations now, with the benefit of time and the fact that our views have changed and we're more accepting of other people, that they're so much more comfortable with identity and accepting identity and its multiple layers, many faceted layers, and of identity that we have, and the boxes that we all occupy. And I think that's a really good thing that younger people now. And I guess I'm not saying that the battle is over, and there's a lot of people with some very fixed ideas and prejudices, and obviously it can be easy in a way to say that people are more open in their ways of thinking in a place like London, but obviously you move outside very quickly, things go back 30 or 40 years in terms of thinking. And obviously even within London, within families and stuff, I guess there's some pretty backwards ways of thinking. But I think it's good that on the whole, certainly on a generation basis, kids, in terms of identity, and I think it's important. I think there's so many layers of identity, and it's just understanding that we should all honour those identities and just understand the humanity within all of us, rather than trying to put people into boxes, because it's pointless.
And when you visit India, or when you have visited India in the past, what kind of impact has that had on you in terms of just how you view yourself as a person and culturally within the world?
I think when I was younger, it used to be quite a challenge. So, when you're a child, when you're kids just don't understand. So imagine being 8 years old or whatever, and then suddenly being transported to a world away. And, I just wanted to go home, really. And I didn't really understand what was going on. And, and then often people wouldn't understand you because they wouldn't understand your English and they wouldn't understand your Punjabi. So it'd be like, they wouldn't understand what you were saying. And half the time you wouldn't understand what they were saying as well. So, but, often these things are transcended by family and stuff. But, so it's interesting. But yeah, I mean, as you get older, I think I'll just go back to that. You understand that, try and find that humanity within all of us rather than trying to put people into boxes. So that's my personal view on it. Everyone might not think that way, but I don't like that kind of them and us way of thinking.
No.
But there is a lot of it out there.
And in terms of languages, you now speak Spanish? So
in terms of languages, interestingly enough, when I went to nursery school, I didn't really speak that much English. Mm-hmm. Spoke Punjabi. Mm-hmm. So Punjabi is my mother tongue.
Yes.
English, I speak a little bit of that.
A little bit, just a little bit.
At school, I can understand Hindi, which is the language of Bollywood. I don't really speak it, but I can understand it. Mm-hmm. At school, I learned French, so my French is actually okay because I spent a fair amount of time, very fortunately, in my 20s in Paris, working in Paris. So, and having learnt it at school, I guess kind of 50-50, I can understand and speak. Mm-hmm. A smattering of German, a very small amount of German. And then, yes, I'd love to be fluent in Spanish. But
okay, you're on that journey.
Yeah, puedo hablar poquito. Quiero hablar más. Con tiempo.
Okay.
So, yeah.
With time.
With time, yes. I'd like to learn to speak Spanish fluently.
Which language, when you do speak the language, do you enjoy speaking the most?
God, that's an interesting question. I like having just been addicted to the show Call My Agent on Netflix, which is an amazing show set in Paris about these acting agents. It's amazing. Mm-hmm. But it just reminded me of how wonderful Paris is. It's the cinematography of showing like the streets of Paris. And the language is so beautiful. I do think when you hear them swearing and, just being typically Gallic and that kind of flowing, it's a very beautiful and sexy language. But yes, I do like Spanish as well. It's really cool. And obviously Spanish has its own place given that so many parts of the world speak it. And it is, and it can be quite beautiful as well, I think. So,
The jury is out.
Yeah, the jury's out. If you think about how many languages and how many dialects there are on this planet, I've got some friends who know like so many different languages and ask them which language resonates for them. And I often think, does the language you speak affect the way you think? That's obviously that thing about Eskimos and having 20 words for snow, or the fact that the way we see the electromagnetic spectrum and the way we say green, blue, yellow, the way we've divided it is not how every culture divides the electromagnetic spectrum. So that's the interaction between language and thought. Again, that could be a whole nother podcast.
It could. I'll be back.
I'll do my research.
I need to do a bit of research.
Both of us. Yeah.
So in all the places that you have been in the world so far, where has had the biggest impact or influence on you?
In what way?
Perhaps changed your way of thinking, or opened your eyes to a world beyond that which you had understood until now.
That's really interesting. I think because I've not spent enough time in most of those places, because I've gone pretty much as a tourist, dare I say, I'd rather say traveller, but often we end up on this conveyor belt, right? So everyone loves to say, oh yeah, I'm not a tourist, I'm a traveller, but well, actually not everyone, but many of us have this kind of snobbery, don't we, that we want to. But inevitably, I think we all end up in the capitalistic churn of a place to some extent.
It turns out to be a tick box exercise.
Exactly.
So
often,
if you're not,
and then we're all on Lonely Planet, and we're all on the same things. And obviously, at scale, these things end up going that way. But I think, to be honest, you need to spend a bit of time in a place to get that, and to really get your going back to that thing about language and the way people think, and that being driven by the ways you think being different in different cultures. I think you need to spend a lot of time in a place, and I'm not sure I've had everything turned upside down enough. I haven't spent so long like you have, travelling around. Maybe that's the next chapter, to actually spend enough time somewhere else to have that. And I think you probably don't need to go that far to find certain things changing. And obviously, I think even you just need to go to France, right, where you just see that things are a bit topsy-turvy in terms of the way they see the world. Sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse.
Where would you head if you were given the chance to pack your bags and leave tonight? Where would you head?
Spain. So for me, it's about Spain. I've always loved Spain. I just love the culture and the people, and like I said, the food.
It's amazing, isn't it?
I just think, they just get on with it. The Italians like to sort of prance around and preen, and don't get me wrong, their food is good.
Yes.
But the Spanish.
No disrespect to the Italians.
No disrespect to I wouldn't dare disrespect the Italians. So,
but Spain has your
Spain, and funnily enough, I was reading a book recently about. Or something on the internet anyway about Spain and the way I think it was some old footage of some documentary or maybe some BBC footage of people poo-pooing the Spaniards, and it had such a bad reputation.
Really?
Going to Spain, because remember, it was the era of Franco.
Yes.
So the Spanish culture, you've got to understand, until the 70s, where obviously the whole tourist thing, where suddenly it opened up. Before that, it was under the Franco regime.
Yes,
Spain was held back, and people had this view of Spanish food being truly awful. Obviously now we've got a world of places like San Sebastian with more Michelin star places than anywhere else, and so many Spanish places. Spain has become so famous now for gastronomy, and it just opened up, and obviously like places like El Bulli and stuff like that. So many amazing places now. So
but you're going to make me laugh, because the UK has a terrible reputation for its food, but it's changed again in the last 20, 30 years, I would say. But I had a horrendous, certainly from the Spanish and the French coming here, and Marmite sandwiches. And
good point.
And chip buddy sandwiches.
It reminds me of Down and Out in Paris and London by Orwell, where there's the two parts of the book where when he's in France, it's all red wine and baguette subsisting on. It makes me laugh. It's that Mediterranean way where, in many ways, like red wine's cheaper than water, right?
Yes.
Whereas here, it's all cups of tea and I think it was cups of tea and sunblessed, buttered toast.
Exactly.
That would be the equivalent. Cups of tea and bread, I think it was. Yeah. So sorry, Orwell, if I got that wrong. I think...
Well, I know when I came back from being in the Balkans for a number of years, or it was almost 8 years I was away, coming back, and suddenly the coffee culture was here. I thought, what's happened?
That was when the Australians landed. Yeah.
And now it's incredible. It's like it is a different world to the one I had left for a while. So it was quite nice to come back to it and be a part of it, because that's where the bookshop had the cafe too. So we were able to take advantage of that as well. And you talked about Gallows food. So what would be your Gallows food? Your last meal?
That's a good question. I've thought about this, and it hasn't really changed. It's good. I think it would be quite simple. It would be something like a basic, pretty good Indian meal, I think, like a chicken curry, homemade, with love, and like chapatis that have just come off the stove, off the tawa, as you saw earlier. And I don't know what else. Maybe roasted aubergines. And some yogurt with cucumber, just a good balanced meal with some pickle. So maybe some rice. Just a good.
It's a good meal.
Maybe.
Yes.
Yeah.
I need to think about what mine would be.
It's an interesting question, isn't it?
It is, because I know for me, my tastes and what I loved as a child, and even right up until I was 20s, 30s, has changed quite radically in the last, I would say, 5-10 years. 5 years, definitely. Maybe even in the last year, more and more about fresh vegetables and herbs and spices as well. Even though I've eaten in food markets around the world, I still defaulted back to what I used to love, which was toad in the hole, Yorkshire pudding, with sausages.
Lovely.
And now,
Can't beat that stuff.
Now it's not really on my radar in the way that it used to be. Yeah.
Oh, toad in the hole is amazing.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, a good pie and mash.
Good pie.
I've really missed
steak
that.
and Guinness pie.
I've so missed. That's one of the biggest things I've missed with the fact that we've just been through winter, like autumn and winter, and actually a fairly cold spring right now. Is that being able to go to a pub and have a good pub lunch, like a roast.
Yeah. On a day like today, where the sun's been out and sitting outside in the garden, spring day.
Just a good roast or a pie served for you. It's one of the nicest things, and we'll get back.
We will.
Yeah.
Not long now.
Yeah.
Hopefully. When I arrived, we just did a little Instagram film of you cooking a kind of pancake.
Yeah, not a pancake, more like a roti. Yeah, like a roti chapati. But it's this is from the Gujaratis. It's from Western India. And it's called tepla. So it's made with Indian chapati flour, which is normally it's a whole wheat flour, but I think it's milled more finely. So therefore, it produces those lovely, a proper roti or chapati done well. It's amazing. It's something I've grown up with, but I think a lot of people don't appreciate how amazing it is. It's like it's got to be thin, and then when you cook it on the tawa, it will puff up. It's just a miracle.
It's lovely,
to me.
yeah.
But this tepla is it's some of that flour. It's got some other flours, which is why it's so healthy. It's got gram flour, which I think a lot of people know. It's quite famous.
Which is a couscous made from.
It's made from chickpeas or
chickpeas. Sorry, yes.
Or so made from chickpeas. I think it's actually one of the pulses anyway. And then it's got two other grains in it. It's got millet flour, which is quite dark, very good for you. It's high in fibre. And then sorghum, which is another ancient grain, I think. So it has a combination of all of those. It's got a load of spices, and then it's got this herb, fenugreek. Or we call it in Hindi, methi. It's an amazing herb. We often use it quite a lot of cooking. It can be used in like a really amazing. It's so aromatic. You get it in like chicken curries. We use it dried as well. We can use it dried in certain dishes as well. But obviously people might be familiar with the seeds too. But this in that dough, it's got the dough with all of those flours. It's also got the moisture comes from putting yogurt in there, and the moisture comes out as you need it. Comes out of all of that methi, all of the fenugreek leaves that have been chopped up finely in it. So it's very healthy, and I like to make a load of it, and then that's an easy and accessible lunch, and have it with a pickle. And I had a homemade pickle sat on the side as well.
That was delicious. Really good.
Yeah.
So that had carrot and green chilli?
Yeah, so the traditional I think is carrot and green chilli, but I added a bit of red pepper and a bit of ginger, which I think is fairly traditional. And then it's got loads of pickling spices, like Indian sort of 5 spices of pickling one. So yes, the fenugreek seeds. So it's a nice segue there, and a number of other spices, and mustard oil as well. So yeah, mustard seeds are key.
Yes.
Fenugreek seeds, fennel, and then 2 others, and mustard seeds, mustard oil.
That was delicious, really. And the two together,
it's
so
a nice
delicious
combo,
and
right?
really
It's
filling
simple.
as well. I mean, it just had one, and it was just filled me up.
Yeah, I mean, there you go, and that's I think again the key of just having real food with fibre in it,
Definitely,
rather than just eating loads of processed food where the more you eat, seemingly the more hungry you get, right?
Yeah.
Because it's all of the goodness has been taken out, and then they add. So they create stuff that's highly refined, so your blood sugar just goes up automatically.
Yeah.
It's got God knows what else in there in terms of weird chemicals and emulsifiers and stuff that basically blat your microbiome. But suddenly your sugar level, your insulin's going up, and then by the end of it, half an hour later, you're hungry again because you're just creating a hole in your stomach. There's no fibre, so then you're not feeding your microbiome. There's none of those prebiotics either. You eat a proper real meal with some real things in it, and suddenly, you imagine you had that. You would have had it with some yogurt, so you got the protein from the yogurt, and obviously there's protein in those flours as well. Unrefined carbohydrates, lots of fibre, and then maybe you would have some fruit afterwards, and then you wouldn't be hungry, and you wouldn't have actually eaten that much in terms of the dreaded calories. You don't need calorie count because your body's sated with not that much food, really. Whereas you could eat loads of refined food. You could eat white bread and just feel hungry a second later.
Yeah, you just want to
It's
have
just
more
got
and
loads
more
of
and more
chemicals in
because
it.
it's just It's almost like there's something in there that makes you want to eat more and more and more before you've known it. You've eaten sort of
But
like
the key
4
point
slices
is
of bread
that,
and still not full.
Yeah, the key point is there's no fibre, so you're not actually, it's not helping your system run, and your blood sugar immediately goes through the roof.
Mm-hmm.
And then so half an hour later you feel sluggish and you want some more.
Yeah.
I've read a lot about nutrition, and there's this guy Gary Tobes who's written this book, Why We Get Fat, and you just have this metabolic setting, and so people the dial gets moved into this metabolic setting where they're in a very insulin resistant mode, where they're constantly, their body's just flooded with insulin, and whatever they eat, it just basically gets added on as fat. It doesn't improve the energy in their body. So one is their engine's not running right, and they're adding more bad fuel to the engine, which is dysfunctional.
Yes, yeah.
And so,
that means you have these spikes and dips all the time. So
exactly.
you either feel like ready to go, or you're just
spikes and dips, but also the energy is not actually going into fueling you as a human being. Actually, it just goes into your fat cells.
Yeah.
It just goes into increasing those fat cells, because that's where you are, and it can be reversed, but it needs a lot of intervention to sort of change the way, the habits, and change things, so that then our metabolic system moves in a healthier way, where your insulin doesn't go up and down, and your blood sugar doesn't go up and down, and everything's a lot level.
KULI'S Kitchen. So guys, listen in to KULI'S Kitchen. Follow him on Instagram, KULI'S_kitchen.
Yes.
We'll put that in the show notes. And we may well come and visit you in Spain when KULI'S Kitchen is a kitchen in Spain. Possibly.
Always welcome. Definitely.
One last piece of advice to the podcast listeners. If you're on this journey at the moment between having been in the corporate world, being a consultant, and now also driving forward in this new direction, but you're kind of balancing these two journeys at the moment while you perhaps switch over totally. For someone else looking for that switch, trying to follow their path of creativity, what kind of advice would you give to them to get started?
So many of us have this imposter syndrome, is what they often call it, right? So we have that voice in our head that tells us that we can't do something, and we've got to remember that when we look up, we see that the mountain is so far away, and it's so high, and it's so impossible to get there. And yes, it seems easier to just sit on the sofa and watch the next Netflix episode, right? Yeah. And obviously the world around us wants us to do that, just be part of the system. I guess the advice would be, it's hard not to listen to that imposter, the little voice in our head, but is to not judge and not think too much and not navel gaze too much, and to take one step after the other, put our blinkers on and carry on. That journey of consistency is easier said than done, and often you see these little memes and stuff on the internet, or whatever, but it's never a straight line. So it's never a straight line. It's always ziggity zaggity. Embrace the ziggity zaggity. Embrace the joy of that journey, and the where that journey can take you. Know that you might be looking at that peak, and in fact the peak that you're really heading to is going to end up that way, the other peak, and it may be extremely circuitous.
Yes.
But that's, again, to quote many a platitude or whatever, we've got to enjoy the journey rather than focusing on that destination. I know it's
but it's so true.
But it is true. For these truisms as such.
Because it's as you take step by step, and you're assessing as you're going step by step, that other opportunities or choices come in your path that then do lead you in another direction to the one that perhaps initially you thought was for you. And
you never know, do you? You never know. And it's like none of us can just sit here at one point in time and go, I'm going to do X and Y and Z, because the world is changing, we are changing. Definitely. And remember, I guess the other big point is you can't do it on your own.
No.
It's all about people. And I've been saying to you, KULI'S Kitchen is about people. And having gone through this pandemic, it's even more important. People are understanding it's about people. No man is an island.
No.
We can't do it ourselves.
No.
So it's, so we have to have that openness. And obviously, it's important that we work with other people for them to help us, but we collaborate. And indeed, of course, we help them. So
Yeah.
it's having that view that we were out there to help each other. And then the world is a wonderful place, and there's so many opportunities, but we have to be open to it. And I think for me, certainly, when I was younger, and I'm still working on this, but there's that negativity in my head, there's that imposter syndrome, there's that in terms of my interactions with other people, we put people on pedestals, we think everyone else has got the answer.
Yeah.
But we're all going through this world sort of not knowing what the hell's going on. So I think maybe it's being a bit more cheeky, and I think coming out of the pandemic, I need to do more of that, is getting out and being cheeky and going, well, I've got this, I'm following your curiosities, and it's something that, I learned about very much when I did this course, Escape the City, which again, we could talk about another time, but
Yes.
it's following your curiosities, and we talked about olive oil, didn't we? And that's a major curiosity for me. And you talked about your friend, so it's not just listening and go,
yes,
there we go. And so, note to self is to make sure that we end up talking and engaging with that person.
Definitely,
because I don't do enough of that. If I hear something that interests me, is to not just go, okay, that's great, but go, no, I'm going to find out more and I'm going to do it.
Support each other.
Support each other, and being out there in the Mediterranean is important to me. And I say we may well be doing some stuff out in various parts of the Mediterranean. I might be doing some stuff in Tuscany. I might be looking at some stuff in San Sebastian. Watch this space, but it's when
exciting.
we collaborate, and maybe people can do some stuff in London, and I'm here to help people do that. So
fantastic.
yeah, but we do. I think a lot of us struggle, and I think sometimes when I tell people what I've been doing, people who don't know. And then suddenly you come out of yourself and you look at yourself and like, what would me 10 years ago think? And sometimes it's that thing, isn't it, where we look back at ourselves 10 years later and we forget the amount of progress we've actually made.
Exactly. Good point.
We're so inside ourselves and so sort of in the everyday toings and froings of life, we forget how far we have actually come.
Definitely. No, totally. Thank you, Kuli. I mean, as you say, this is all about, the podcast is all about travelling through London, the world, and life. So it is all a journey, and it's been fantastic to have you on the podcast. I hope you've enjoyed it.
Emma, I've really, really enjoyed it. It's been great chatting.
A quick plug again, so it's KULI'S_kitchen.
KULI'S_kitchen on Instagram.
Instagram, and anywhere else that the podcast listeners can find you? Or is that
for the moment, that's the best place to find me.
Sure.
I'm looking at getting a website, and just contact me. We're going to do a lot of good stuff going forward coming out of this. There'll be supper clubs, there'll be cooking lessons in real life and over Zoom, both in groups and one-to-one. So it's going to be an exciting journey. And how we talked about all of this stuff and the journey. I know it's going to be really exciting going forward. So I'm really, really look forward to working with you guys and helping you to cook some amazing food and help you become more confident in the kitchen.
Fantastic.
And be healthy and vibrant and all of those good things.
That sounds great. So we'll definitely do a follow-up in a year or so's time, wherever you are in the world. But for now, Kuli, thank you so much. And to all our podcast listeners out there, I hope you've enjoyed today's podcast. If you have, please do share with your friends. Give us a rating and a review, that'd be fantastic. And also subscribe if you have time. Have a good rest of the week. We'll be back again next week with another podcast episode. But from Kuli and I, take care. Thanks for listening, and bye for now.